Thanks for tuning into the Jurassic Park cast, the Jurassic Park podcast, where guests chat with me about Michael Crichton's 1990 novel Jurassic Park, and also not that too. A big shout out to Christoph Oakes of Snale, and a big thank you to him for letting me use his band's music to score this podcast. You can find his music on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today's intro is from the song The Incredible Monster from the Center of the Earth, from the soundtrack to the movie The Incredible Monster from the Center of the Earth, and the outro is Sacrifice to the Inhuman Creature from Snale's debut album Snale. Now please hear this clip from episode 66, The Iterations, where I begin my comparative review of the film Jurassic Park scene by scene and identify which elements the script has borrowed from the novel. Here's the excerpt. In episode 13, Shadow, with terrific guest Phil Hort, Phil made a terrific observation that it's shocking how much of the novel is in the movie. All kinds of little beats and tiny details are adapted right from the text. Granted, they just couldn't fit everything from the text into the movie. There's just so much. So I thought it'd be worthwhile to go back and review the film scene by scene and identify all the references to the source text, beginning with the first scene in the movie, Accident at Isla Nublar. I'll read a transcript. I've got access to David Koepp's draft of the script and Maria Scotch Marmo's draft of the script as well, and we'll review all the details from the novel and how this film was put together. All right, Act 1, Accident at Isla Nublar. We have bustling foliage, a stoic face of a worker in a helmet, and they all look very serious, and then Muldoon is armed, and he's waiting for what's coming through the foliage. But it's not an animal, it's a vehicle carrying a container. It's driven by a forklift to a loading bay. The camera zooms on Muldoon, armed with a shotgun. A crane brings forth a large metal container, which drives forward. An impressive-looking paddock enters view. People are shouting orders as the metal container comes forward. Worker says, "Everybody heads up." Another one is speaking in Spanish. The caption reads, "Isla Nublar, 120 miles west of Costa Rica." We can hear the caged animal purring and shrieking unearthly sounds inside. Robert Muldoon says, "Okay, pushing team, move in there." There's some more speaking in Spanish. Muldoon says, "I want tasers on full charge." And then the loading team grabs the cage, and a terrifying shriek frightens them away, and the cage shakes a little bit, and Muldoon says, "Go on, step back in." And then they say some more stuff in Spanish. Look like they're saying push. Robert Muldoon says push, and the workers push the cage into the paddock entrance until an electronic beep buzzes. Muldoon says, "We're locked. Loading team, step away. Gatekeeper." And note, if we're locked means that it was secured. I guess that was proven not to be true because the raptor seems to knock it free anyhow. Joffrey climbs up on top of the cage, and the creature looks up and snarls. And Muldoon says, "Joffrey, raise the gate." And Joffrey begins to raise the gate. The creature suddenly shrieks and rams the back of the cage, shoving the metal container backward and knocking Joffrey to the ground. It begins pulling him into the cage, and Muldoon grabs him. "Block the opening, don't let her out." So it's not about the dude, it's about keeping it from getting out. Worker 2, "Somebody help him." The dude is lifted bodily up into the air, and this reminds me of Spielberg's work on Jaws, when you can see the swimmer being shaken back and forth. That's a very Spielberg moment. Robert Muldoon, "Worker back!" And the workers begin tasering the creature, and then the creature looks Muldoon right in the eye. That's what that shot's supposed to be. "Shoot her!" he yells, and Joffrey groans, and the creature pulls him through Muldoon's grip as gunfire is heard, and the scene transitions away. So what is from the novel that's in this scene here? To start, we're told that this is Isla Nublar, 120 miles off the coast of Costa Rica. This jives with one account in the novel. On page 6, Manuel Aragon at the Bahia Anasco Clinic tells Dr. Bobby Carter of the island where the InGen helicopter is from, and he says, quote, "In the ocean, perhaps 120 miles offshore." But Bob Morris tells Alan Grant on page 36 the island is, quote, 100 miles off the west coast. And on page 46, Hammond tells Grant over the phone, "Oh yes, we bought it and started our operation, 4 or 5 years ago now. I forget exactly. Called Isla Nublar, big island, 100 miles offshore." So there is some inconsistency, and it looks like the screenwriter just went with the first mention in the novel, which was on page 6. There's nothing wrong with that. So this is likely a reimagining of the construction accident scene from the prologue, The Bite of the Raptor, that we get on page 1 of the novel. The worker is said to have fallen and a backhoe ran over him, we're told on page 3, but the injuries appear to be from a mauling, not a construction accident. This worker dies and is whisked away, you'll recall. This is only representative of one of the instances that are plaguing Jurassic Park, as on page 62, Gennaro is questioning Hammond ahead of the inspection. Quote, "I heard there were accidents during construction," Gennaro said. "Some workmen died." "Yes, there were several accidents," Hammond said, "and a total of 3 deaths. 2 workers died building the cliff road, and 1 other died as a result of an earth mover accident in January." Further, on page 147, raptors were at least as intelligent as chimpanzees, and like chimpanzees, they had agile hands that Muldoon recalls. Quote, they, the velociraptors, could escape with ease. And when, as Muldoon had feared, one of them finally escaped, it killed 2 construction workers and maimed a third before being recaptured. After that episode, the visitor lodge had been reworked with heavy barred gates, a high perimeter fence, and tempered glass windows, and the raptor holding pen was rebuilt with electronic sensors to warn of another impending escape. So the novel outlines several instances where raptors have escaped, have attacked, and have killed workers. The most prominent is the sick worker, delivered by Ed Regis to the clinic at Bahia and Asco in January 1989, which might have been Regis's first week on the job. Big differences, though. Everyone is visibly armed with shotguns and big tasers and loads of weapons in the film here. The novel is clear there aren't any weapons effective for dealing with dinosaurs. On page 250, we're told, quote, we have tranquilizer guns that shoot a 20cc dart, Muldoon said. Fine for an animal that weighs 400 or 500 pounds. The Tyrannosaur weighs 8 tons. It wouldn't even feel it. You ordered larger weapons. I ordered 3 larger weapons, Mr. Hammond, but you cut the requisition, so we only got 1. And it's gone. Nedry took it when he left. He later concludes his argument with Hammond. It's your park, Mr. Hammond. You didn't want anybody to be able to injure your precious dinosaurs. Well, now you got a Rexin with the sauropods, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Further on page 271, Muldoon says, the Rex is out there somewhere, he said, squinting at the landscape in the morning sun. We don't have any weapons worth a damn. And at page 372, they're still looking for weapons. Grant turned to Muldoon, quote, what have we got for weapons? Muldoon said, we've got some control nets and shock prods. How good are the shock prods, Grant said. They're like bang sticks for sharks. They have an explosive capacitor tip, delivers a shock on contact. High voltage, low amps, not fatal, but it's definitely incapacitating. So the park is definitely unarmed against the dinosaurs. All the shotguns and stuff in the movie are dreamed up by the scriptwriter. Further, there are a lot of park employees and staff. Jurassic Park was designed to run with minimal staff. On page 62, quote, and the secret to making money in a park, Hammond said, is to limit your personnel costs. The food handlers, ticket takers, cleanup crews, repair teams, to make a park that runs with minimal staff. That was why we invested in all the computer technology. We automated wherever we could. This sets up the park's over-reliance on the computers for control. On page 369, we're told, there were only 24 people on the island that day. As near as they could determine, out of 24 people on the island, 8 were dead and 6 more were missing. Spoiler alert. But if we go through the count, all the Kathys, Marias, and Ramones, and the lab techs and grounds crew, and people handing out pith helmets, you can unofficially tally up like more than 40 people out of the novel. But in the spirit of the text, it is that there are very few people on the island. Any army of armed Marlboro men lined up to move a dinosaur in a container isn't in the spirit of the novel. And finally, instead of meeting Ed Regis in the opening moments, we are introduced to Robert Muldoon. That's a little different. Now, where do some of these new ideas come from? I have a copy of the 1992 screenplay, and it opens differently. From David Koepp, his first idea was an eyeball, big, yellowish, distinctly inhuman, stares raptly between wooden slats, part of a large crate. The eye darts from side to side, alert as hell. This is new. A legend tries to place us, Isla Nublar, 120 miles west of Costa Rica, which is the same as the script. But to us, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's quiet for a second. A roar rises up from the jungle, deafening. The trees shake as something very, very large plows ahead through them, right at us. Every head gathered in this little clearing snaps, turning in the direction of the sound as it bursts through the trees. This is still the same transcript, right? It's a bulldozer. Well, it drops its scoop and pushes forward into the back end of the crate, shoving it across the jungle floor towards an impressive fenced structure that towers over an enclosed section of thick jungle. There's a guard tower at one end of this holding open that makes it look like San Quentin. So this is a bulldozer, not a forklift, and the pen is said to look like San Quentin, a famous prison, perhaps alluding to the moment in the novel where the first glances at Isla Nublar look like Alcatraz, another famous prison. The bulldozer pushes forward into the back end. The crate thuds to the floor. The door slides open in the pen, making a space as big as the end of the crate. Nobody moves for a second. A grim-faced guy who seems to be in charge, Robert Muldoon, although we don't know that yet, says, all right, now pushes, move in, loading team, move it. It's kind of similar dialogue, officially different. Movement has agitated whatever is inside the crate, and the whole thing shivers as growls and snaps come from inside. Everyone moves back. All right, steady, get in there now, push, get back in there. Don't let her know you're afraid. So Muldoon's a little different here. The men go back to the crate and begin to push it into the slot. The crate thuds up against the opening. A green light on the side of the pen lights up, showing contact has been made. In the film, the raptor pen goes from red to green as well. From inside the crate, we get glimpses of what's on the other side of the wooden slats. Jungle foliage, men with rifles, searching searchlights. The view is herky-jerky as the crate is put into motion. Muldoon says, "Well locked. Loading team, step away." Joffrey raised the gate. Identical, unchanged in the final movie. Joffrey has a name here too. Original character, not in the novel. A worker climbs to the top of the crate. The searchlights are trained on the door. The rifleman throws the bolts on their rifles and crack their stun guns, sending arcs of current cracking through the air. The worker gets ready to grab the crate when all at once, a roar from inside the crate, and the panel flies out of his hands and smacks into him, knocking him clear of the crate. Now everything happens at once. The worker thuds to the jungle floor, the crate jerks away from the mouth of the holding pen flash, and an alarm buzzer sounds. This is all the same. This is like the first draft, and it's made out into the final cut. And a claw slashes out from the inside of the crate, sinks into the ankle of the worker, dragging him toward the dark mouth between the crate and the pen. The worker screams and paws the dirt, leaving long claw marks as he is rapidly dragged toward the crate. In the film, we don't actually get to see these claws yet. And Muldoon shouts out, "Tasers, get in there! God damn it!" And they fire their guns. The wood of the crate splinters. In the draft, the crate is wood. Muldoon runs in and grabs the worker, trying to pull him free, and wild arcs of currents from the stun guns flash and crack all around. But in a second, the worker is gone. That's kind of how we end in the final draft as well. Yikes. Now I have an even older version of the script, which I'm calling the Marmo rewrite, which is Maria Scotch Marmo's pass at the script after receiving a draft from Michael Crichton himself. So in the Marmo rewrite of 1992, it's an extreme close-up of glowing honey-colored stones. Their shapes abstract as the camera examines air bubbles and crystalline patterns. Moving up and over this amber abstraction, the camera finds unusual shapes and imperfections caught in the glassy stone. Flecks of dirt, hairs, cracks, still moving starbursts of light ricochet off the different surfaces of the stones, and the camera turns along a creamy stretch of amber. It turns in deeper, abstracting the picture further only to find a tiny blur that suddenly racks into focus. A bug. A mosquito lodged within an amber tomb. It is folded on its back. Slow motion as the tip of a fine-pointed drill bores into the amber toward the trapped bug. Orange flecks fly. The mosquito trembles. The drill continues, stopping just before it touches the tiny body. A shiny pair of thin needle-nose pliers reach in the bore hole and extricate the mosquito remains. These are dropped on a brightly lit glass slide. The conveyor belt starts, and the slide moves along, arriving under a long-lensed microscope. In microscopic perspective, a thin needle pierces the bug and delicately removes a fragment of tissue. Pincers snare the fragment, dropping it into a narrow tube. The tube spins faster and faster until it is a blur on the screen, and the screen floods with an infrared light. Gray oval-shaped rocks in a neutral mist. It washes to the Badlands. So Marmo's rewrite from Crichton's text didn't have a raptor attack to open the scene, which makes that scene an adaptation from Koepp's imagination. And we can see how it's related to the novel, but Koepp's adaptation militarizes the park significantly. That said, later as we get through the Marmo rewrite, we'll see that she wrote a very well-armed Jurassic Park as well, so perhaps Koepp was adapting her script and just moving forward. Alright, a big thank you to you for tuning in. If you're interested in more of the podcast, you can find it wherever podcasts are, and just look for Jurassic Park Cast, include those hyphens, or Jurassic Park Podcast. That might work too. And if you like the videos, you can like and subscribe and receive notifications when a new one is available. There's lots more to come. Until next time.